Hi, welcome to Edward Box Guitar Tuition. So I thought I'd start off this sort of year of classic album inspections by just doing a little feature classic album 1970. Obviously I'm going to be doing classic album 1980, focusing on that, but I thought I'd look, just compend 6 albums. 1970 for me is very much the proper kind of birth of heavy metal year. Several albums come out that have all the DNA of what will become heavy metal. In the years before this, obviously the first two Led Zeppelin albums, Led Zeppelin 1 comes out January 69, Led Zeppelin 2 October 69. They're a big influence when they do this heavier tracks. If you think of a track like Dazed and Confused, if you made that a bit heavier, it's almost like a Black Sabbath type riff. Not that Zeppelin appreciate me saying that. And then you got stuff like Blue Cheer in America with their version of Summertime Blues. If you actually listen to the Blue Cheer album, again, there's a couple of really heavy tracks, but it's not all heavy. And I think that's what kind of is the prevalent thing of these albums we're going to look at, and albums that came before. Sometimes they're very heavy, they're just not always heavy, as it were. And obviously Hendrix and Cream would be some of the early things that would kind of get the juices flowing of young musicians. I'm not sure what Grand Funk's debut is, a big influence on American rock bands as well. Mountain as well, something like Mississippi Queen, pretty heavy. I think his Mountain debut came out in 69, could be wrong there. So there's other stuff we could talk about, but let's just kind of get into it. So the first album, obviously the Break cover in 1970, that is heavy and very much seen as possibly the album that invents heavy metal, is Black Sabbath's debut. It comes out 30th of February 1970. So really, this what earmarks this album really is. It's built on 3 absolute stalwart tracks. Black Sabbath, the title track, The Wizard, and NIB, I feel. The original album had 7 tracks. The band just recorded it a couple of days, just played it live in the studio. These are tracks we all know. Black Sabbath, you've got the use of the tritone, and then it goes into that kind of 12/8 riff in the middle. You've got a kind of unison lines, Tony and Geezer doubling up, and then Geezer doing his cool fills. So yeah, it's a classic album. There's no doubt about it. I think really side 1 is much better. You've got Behind the Wall of Sleep, which is probably the lesser known track, but it's really good. Side 2 originally was Evil Woman, which is a cover, Sleeping Village, and then Warning, which is a cover of Ainsley Dunbar's Retaliation track. It's kind of more like a bluesy jam with a lengthy solo. And then they put Wicked World on the CD reissue, so you'll get a lot of versions with 8 tracks. I think there might have been 8 tracks in the US. So the second side of this album, it's not as heavy. It's not as it's got some heavy elements. So certainly the track Black Sabbath kind of this is what heavy metal. It has the subject matter, the evil riff. This is what it's going to sound like. There's no doubt this is a heavy metal album, but it's just not as heavy as people might think it is. I suppose that's what I'm trying to say. So that Break cover there. Then your next one is Deep Purple in rock. So Deep Purple obviously have already done 3 albums, 68, 69. Then they did the Concerto with Orchestra. Then Blackmore says, "Look, we've got to rock it out." You've got to hand it to Blackmore. He's a man of incredible vision. He can see where music's going. Look what he did with Rainbow. So they, take their rocket elements of their sound and just go all out. And I think this album, more than the other ones that I'm going to talk about, is the one that arrives fully formed. So even though Deep Purple are a heavy rock band, hard rock band, and a huge influence on heavy metal, I wouldn't call this album a heavy metal album, but I think this is the most consistently heavy album of these. Some people might disagree. But you got Speed King opening up, needs no introduction, rocking heavy track. Gillan's vocal style, Robert Plant does some kind of high screams, but Gillan's style's more robust. When he does it, he goes all out. The rhythm section of Glover and Pace obviously is as ferocious as Bonham or Iommi, Ward and Butler, but they're kind of hitting kind of high tempos. I think that's the other thing. They do a lot of high tempos, Deep Purple, which Led Zeppelin never really did a lot of, and certainly Black Sabbath didn't do till later. You got Child in Time, the epic ballad with Gillan's Moaning Screams, incredible structured solo by Blackmore in the middle, bringing the classical elements as well. A key part of heavy metal is its references to classical music, our use of arpeggios, use of minor keys, use of minor scales, unison lines. Then you got Flight of the Rat, again another rocking track. Into the Fire. I'm trying to remember the riffs. There's a riff down, 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 down. I was listening to this recently, but it's hard for me to, remember them all. But Living Wreck, again, it's got a groove. Hard Loving Man. All these songs rock hard. And then Black Knight wasn't even on the original album. It was a single. Of course, that's one of the all-time classic sort of rock tracks. It was a big hit. That kind of made it onto reissues of this as an 8-track album. But this album's totally, it knows what it wants to be. Deep Purple know what they want to be, and everyone's in sync in trying to accomplish that, obviously, with Martin Birch engineering some of the tracks as well, a key proponent as well in the development of the sound of heavy metal with his engineering production skills. So in rock, just coming, well, not that long after Black Sabbath, 4 months is quite a long time then. Then you've got Uriah Heep, very heavy, very humble. You'd think this was later, but it's released June 1970, so it must come out literally a few weeks after In Rock. Famously, Lester Bangs of this band makes it, I'll commit suicide. Why did he attack Uriah Heep? I think really because it's coming on the back of, by this point you've had Led Zeppelin 1 and 2, you've probably had some heavier US albums like Mountain, Grand Funk, you've had Black Sabbath, you've had Deep Purple. So, they get the shit end of the stick. It's fair to say that, I don't think Heep compared to Purple's is refined the sound, and Purple would be the obvious comparison because of Hammond organ. But this album, there's no doubt that Gypsy is the staple track, it's the classic track, they've played it live ever since. It's fucking heavy, because the Hammond organ, down, 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 interesting in the key of C as well, C minor, not a typical key, why it was done in that, I don't know, but it has got a really heavy sound. And yeah, again, and the harmonised vocal screams as well, Byron taking a different approach to the kind of what become metal singing. Influenced maybe more Rob Halford and people like that. Gillan's more guttural thing would influence Bruce Dickinson, but I think David Byron probably found his way into Rob Halford's style a bit more. Also, you've got Queen influenced by Heap, I think, with the multi-track harmonies. Walking in Your Shadow. Again, this is a rocker, more just of a heavy rock tune. Come Away Melinda, they're doing the folky thing again. Black Sabbath experiment with acoustic guitars as well. Lucy Blues, just a kind of blues track with a Hammond organ. Dream Mare, quite a lot of harmonised vocals on that. Real Turned On, so the bluesy track. I'll Keep On Trying. Quite rocky that one. And Wake Up, Set Your Sights. They've got the kind of rocking elements, but really Gypsy is the track that's heavy on this. So again, lots of elements that people would go, that's heavy metal, but not fully metal. Certainly the Sabbath album's a lot, the Sabbath debut is a lot more metal. So that's very heavy, very humble. I should just say, I do enjoy this album. It's a bit patchy. I prefer Salisbury. Uriah Heep albums get better, in the first classics. Look at yourself. The next one up is Black Sabbath Paranoid. So Black Sabbath doing the double. One of the bands who've done, I managed to do that, 2 classic albums in 1 year. This arrives much more fully formed, September 1970, 18th of September. Again, it's not an album, I was going to do an individual review of this, but it's an album everyone knows well. I don't tend to pull it out much now because you hear these tracks so much, but obviously War Pigs is an incendiary track, very heavy, it's metal. As is Paranoid, not one of the band's best tracks by a long shot, but you got those pedaling eighth notes on Tony's guitar, which is a big influence. It's short and sweet. Ozzy's vocal melodies, vocal range, the guitar solo break. You know, this shorter metal track will be an influence on numerous bands. And then they go space rock with the Planet Caravan again, like the Blur Eye Heat, Conway Melinda doing something spacey. Got Iommi's use of the Dorian mode, very jazzy. I think that's the thing as well. There's quite a lot of jazzy influence on stuff, but certainly the Heap album is quite jazzy in places. How jazzy is the Deep Purple one? Well, you know, sometimes they do stuff like John Lord, but again, he's using those more classical scales. You know, he's not using the Dorian mode. Musicians will know that's a real good mode in jazz. And you got Iron Man. I think what's interesting with Iron Man, when I play, I always go dun, 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 dun. When you actually listen to it, the band play it quite a bit faster, and they're kind of pushing ahead. You know, dun, 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 dun. They're kind of racing quite a bit. It's quite interesting sort of hearing Bill Ward do that, because on War Pigs, his snare's so lazy. Boom, he's leaving it as late as possible. And it's, again, that's another, playing the snare behind the beat, the drums behind the beat, is such an important part of metal. You've got Electric Funeral, an okay filler track. I don't know if it's the best track. Hand of Doom, you can hear, almost imagine Soundgarden doing a cover of that vocal melody that Ozzy comes up with. You can almost hear Cornell in that to me. Rat Salad, never been into this track much. And then you got Fairies Wear Boots, another classic. And again, Sabbath bringing the jazz influence, it swings. Dun, 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 down. Yeah, coming after in rock, this is the kind of like first kind of more fully formed heavy metal album, I think. Or heavy album. In rock's heavy, this album's heavier, but in rock kind of beats it to the chop in its overall consistency of heaviness. Then that last two I'm going to pick this is a cult album, but I was just listening to it before, and it's quite, you know, it's certainly as heavy as Very Heavy and Very Humble, probably more guitars in a way, and it's Lucifer's Friend album. This is a cult album from November 1970. If you go on YouTube, check out Ride the Sky. It's got a bugle horn in it, but it does the Immigrant Song melody. It's pretty rocking. John Lawton sings on this, so he went over. This band didn't actually tour at this point, but he obviously sung for Uriah Heep. But again, Lawton's vocals, a lot of high screams, a lot of big, sort of more Coverdale bluesy voice, but with the Gillan screams. Lots of stuff on this that's as heavy as the aforementioned albums. But Ride the Sky, absolutely ripping. Great sort of metal title. Kind of weird, the album cover of this, it's kind of weird. Weird cover. So it hasn't got the metal imagery of Black Sabbath or of the in rock cover. Its branding's not there. But it is interesting, a bit more schizophrenic, but there is heaviness on this album that is equal to the heaviness I've been talking about. Worth checking out. My final example, again, this is more of a bluesy rock album. I think they kind of brought more folky elements later, but the vocals are quite folky. But the key thing this album is Wishbone's Ash Davey from December 4th, 1970, is its use of twin guitars, which of course will influence Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden, and Steve Harris has always said that Wishbone Ash was influenced for that. Judas Priest was influenced. There's bits on this where the lighter stuff you can almost hear, like Rock-a-Rolla, the Caviar and Meths instrumental, particularly springs to mind, has been influenced by Wishbone Ash. Obviously Finley's who did the twin guitar thing, but I don't think they were as aware as with Wishbone Ash doing it. But this has a really classic track on it called Phoenix, which is a live step with Wishbone Ash. The first track, Blind Eye, pretty much very early on, there's a unison guitar line. So not really heavy, this album, but using the twin guitars and sort of bringing in those lighter elements that metal bands will use. Obviously you've heard it with Sabbath and so on, Heap, Purple, they've all got those lighter elements, but think about metal bands bringing out the acoustic guitars, obviously Zeppelin would be an influence on that as well. This album's definitely a 1970 perpetrator, so to speak. in 71, Heap would do 2 albums, Salisbury, that would be more experimental, but then with the Look At Yourself album, they'd make a very definitive early metal album to me. Obviously, Purple continued with Fireball on a run. Sabbath would do Master Reality, probably the heaviest, Solitude aside, the heaviest album done by anyone up to that point. And it's still kind of one of the heaviest albums ever. Budgie released their debut album in 71. That's very pretty heavy, those early Budgie albums as well. Nazareth would break cover as well with their debut album. And you got cult stuff like Sir Lord Baltimore, which is a cult American kind of early, what's the word I'm looking for? Exponent of some kind of metallic sounds. And obviously Kept Me Grand Funk would keep going, and Mountain and so on. But yeah, so that's my little run through those albums. They're all obviously, Black Sabbath, In Rock, Paranoid are absolute classics. Very Heavy and Very Humble. It's got Gypsy on it. It's a well-known debut album. Wishbone Ash. The first few albums are very beloved. Lucifer's Friend, more of a kind of wild card in there. But yeah, that is my little, to begin this year, my little take. All these albums are 55 years old this year. It'd be nice to wait till they're 60, but I don't know if I'll be doing this then. So, yeah. Okay, so remember, share and subscribe, and I hope you enjoy this year of albums, celebrating albums released in 1985, 1990, 1995, 75 and so forth. And then obviously classic album 1980. Remember, check out, that's a separate thing because I really wanted to focus on 1980, such a special time for heavy music. Okay, remember, share and subscribe. Thanks very much, and I'll see you soon.